You know that you should have a genealogy research plan every time you sit down to research, right? But what's happening if you maybe have that research plan, but it's not necessarily working for you? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the common reasons why your genealogy research plan is not working. Hey there, if we haven't met before, I am Lisa with Are You My Cousin? And on this YouTube channel, I strive really hard to help you find your ancestors, grow that family tree, but not get overwhelmed in the process. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, you're in the right place. Now, I love a good plan. I love a good genealogy research plan, and I love having a good plan for really any project I tackle in life. What can I say? I like to organize things. Now, maybe you've watched my previous genealogy video on how to create a genealogy research plan, and you've actually done that, but it's not quite working for you. It's not moving your research forward. So what do you do now? You're probably wondering, Lisa, do every one of your genealogy research plans work? Well, no, they don't actually. And when they are not working for me, I can usually go back, and what I've started to see are some very common things that have happened with those research plans. So let's talk about those. Let's talk about those common elements of why your genealogy research plan is not working right now. Now, one of the big things that happens for people is they create these wonderful research plans, but they're not in a format that they can access when they need them. So what do I mean by that? Well, what that looks like is that perhaps you've written out that wonderful genealogy research plan. You've got it on paper, maybe you've got it in your agenda, maybe you've even just written it up in a Word document on your computer. That's all great, but that research plan is not syncing across all of your devices. So it's not digital, and if it's not syncing across all your devices, you run the risk of not actually having it with you when you need it. I create my genealogy research plans using Google Sheets, which is a spreadsheet, and I keep them in my Google Drive account. Now, why do I do that? Because I can access it on my laptop, I can access it on my iPad, I can access it on my phone. So it doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a full-on planned research trip to a courthouse or to an archives, or if I've just been able to run across and have a few minutes where I have a chance to research unexpectedly. Maybe I've run across a record that I hadn't really thought that I would be using. Maybe it was something I run into somebody who has some information that I didn't even think to talk with about. I've got it right there. I can pull it up in an instant because it syncs across. I can update that research plan. I can reference that research plan regardless of what device I have with me. And well, like many people, my cell phone is always with me, so I can access that plan whenever and wherever. Another reason your genealogy research plan may not be working right now is that your genealogy research question, that thing that you're searching for, is too broad. When we go too broad on a research project, it gets unwieldy. It's very hard to keep a focus and find exactly what you need. You run the risk of overlooking important clues at a more specific level. So looking for an entire family line may be too broad. Maybe what you need to look for is your grandmother's grandmother or your grandmother's mother, that one generation, and focus there, not focusing on the entire line at one time, but focusing on that one particular generation question. I have more about how to do that in the previous video I made on genealogy research plans, and I will link that in the comments below as well as up top here on your upper right hand corner of the video. Now, creating your genealogy research plan, creating an effective genealogy research plan can get a bit tricky sometimes when it comes to your genealogy research. And that's why I focus on creating effective genealogy research plans with my VIP clients. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about my VIP services, feel free to check out the link in the description below. All right, another reason that your genealogy research plan may not be working for you right now is the fact that you are not consistent in using that research plan. You are not consistently referring to it when you sit down to start your project. You are not remembering and focusing and reminding yourself of what your goal is, your very specific goal at that point, what records you have looked at, what records you're going to look at. You're not consistently checking it before, but you're also, another consistency error that I see is people do not consistently update that research plan. You get to the end of your research time and you think, okay, I've taken every last minute I can to find those records, to research that ancestor, but I've got to go pick the kids up from school. I've got to go start dinner. I'll remember next time when I sit down what I'm going to be looking for in this part of this plan. I will tell you, I never remember where it was I stopped. I have to spend some time at the beginning of a research project when I sit down looking at it thinking, where did I stop? What exactly was my thought process? What were my next steps that I was planning to do? And so I actually waste research time either redoing research I already did or just sitting down trying to figure out what the next step was. So we want to make sure that we're being consistent with creating, and not only creating that research plan, but updating it as we go. Guys, this is my hard and fast rule for myself, and I'd love for you guys to do it too. I spend the last 5 to 10 minutes of my research time that I have updating my research plan, about making sure I document what I've looked at, what my results were, or maybe even what just my thought processes were. And I always put in bright orange. I just chose orange for some reason on my research plan. I highlighted bright orange my next steps, so that I know when I sit down the next time, I can go straight to it. I refresh my memory on what my research question is. I refresh my memory on what my research thought processes were, and I can get right back into that research immediately without having to waste time figuring out what in the world was I supposed to be doing. Now, another common issue I see with genealogy research plans, and I absolutely did this very early on, is not including aspects of social history within that research plan, not including time and resources within that plan to learn about the context that my ancestors lived in, to understand the history, to understand what they were facing every morning when they got up, understanding how either local events were impacting their lives or whether world events were impacting their lives. So making sure that you add in time and resources for understanding the context of the times, understanding history, understanding what was happening is crucial to your genealogy research, because it's really difficult to understand what motivated our ancestors to do some of those crazy things that we think about that they did. But when we understand what they were living in, when we understand the times, when we understand the location they were living in and the pressures of life that they had, then we're thinking, maybe they weren't there. This wasn't such a crazy thing that they did. No wonder they left that area, or no wonder they didn't leave that area when they could have. So make sure you understand context and include that in your research plan. Another thing that I see when it comes to research plans that are not working optimally for someone is including waiting time and follow-up. Oftentimes, as we see, when we get deep into these research processes, we actually have to request records we have to send off. We have to request records. We have to request searches, whether we do that through snail mail, whether it's an online request through a repository, because we simply can't get to the records themselves. We have to request those and we have to wait. But here's a tip, guys. This is something that I didn't do for a long time, and I kind of wasted some time with that. Every time I make a request, whether it's online, whether it's snail mail, however, whenever I'm needing to request searches for records, I will mark my calendar. When I sent that request off, then I move forward and for an appropriate amount of time, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, where I will actually schedule follow-up. In other words, it may be, let me look, did the record come in? And I forgot to mention it in my research plan. Maybe I haven't heard anything. So, let me follow up and make sure that they received the request. And let me make sure they don't have extra questions. Let me make sure I understand when I could possibly be hearing from that record. So it is important that we, not only as we're requesting for records, but make sure that we're doing appropriate follow-up. We don't want to miss getting a record simply because we failed to follow up. Now, if you want to learn more about genealogy research, if you want to get more tips and tricks to add to your genealogy toolbox, be sure and grab what I call the Big Genie List. It is a free PDF for you with some of my favorite resources and tips and tricks in it. So I've got the link on the screen, and I'll have the link in the description below as well.